Hi, today I am so excited to introduce you to Laura DeNooyer. And Laura, welcome to Between the Lines podcast.
Thank you. It's very good to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, we met in the weirdest way, didn't we? We were just
Yes, we
talking
did.
about this. So Laura got on my website, and she was inviting me to be on her blog, got on my website, and it turned out that one of our favorite books as children, chapter books, was the same book. And this is how nerdy I am. I actually had taken the cover and framed it. It's hard to see, and it's called A Room for Kathy. And it even has a price down here. It was 50 cents at the time that it was published, way before we were born, just so you know. It was not a new book when we read it. But it's funny that she mentioned that was a book she read too. And what are the odds of that, right?
Yeah, I remember reading that in your bio. I don't remember it probably was on your about page. And I just thought,
Probably.
oh my goodness, I can't believe there's somebody who loved the same book because I've never seen that book since then. It's not really a classic or anything that you hear about much. So
And
I think you and I are the only ones I know of.
well, and how many books have you read since then? I mean, I don't remember, aside from my high school books that I had to read, I don't
Mhm.
remember other books that I read as a child, a chapter book. I think it was, for me, it was a big deal because now you read it earlier than me. You're gonna see how much smarter that Laura is than I am.
Oh, no, I don't think I actually read it in second grade. It was
Okay.
more like fourth grade.
Okay. Okay.
Or
Well, I
fifth.
was in
Yeah.
fifth grade, and our teacher, I still remember him. I don't remember most of my teacher names either. I think I have like a TBI of some sort. But my teacher was Mr. Mora, and he was actually from Hawaii. And he was one of my favorite teachers, and he gave us it was a contest, who could read the most pages before school started the next day. And well, I like to win. I am very competitive. I was more so then than I am now, but very competitive. I went home and I had this book, A Room for Kathy. I read the entire book with my mom marking it so I could, say I read it all. And I won that contest on that
Oh,
particular book. So that's, I guess, maybe one of the reasons I remember it so well.
oh, well, I remember just reading it on my own. I think I ordered it through a Scholastic
Hmm.
order form or something. And so I owned the book and I loved reading it. And she did her room and it has yellow walls, right?
Yeah.
And so now as an adult, my daughters have noticed that I have a lot of yellow walls in my house. I've never connected it to that book, but I
Oh,
thought, oh, I
set the
wonder if there's
tone.
just something, a little childhood deja vu or memory or something.
It's funny how you remember those things because, and I think I own the book as well. I happen to be at home. I had it at home. But the funny thing is, um, it just flitted out of my brain. There you go. I do think I have a TBI. But
Oh,
anyway, I think the one of the things that struck me with that book is we had five kids in our family. I was never going to have a room of my own. So,
mm,
the fact that Kathy got a room of her own meant a lot to me. So anyway.
yes, you could imagine
You
it.
could, I could, it was a dream of mine. If I could
Yeah.
have my own room, there were four girls in our family and one boy.
Oh,
So, of course, my brother was the only one who got his own room, and the rest of us
yeah.
were sharing forever. So, I had to wait till my sister went off to college to get my own room.
Oh,
Anyway, it's just kind of funny. And then we were talking, and we both happened to love one of our high school books, and that was To Kill a Mockingbird, which I also have framed, which is very nerdy of
mm.
me. I have framed. So, Laura, we're here to talk about you, though, not A Room for Kathy, but your book. And it came out in September, and it's called The Broken Weathervane. And by the way, I don't know if you have a copy of it. The cover is beautiful. I went on and looked at the cover, and I just downloaded it on KU. I didn't know it was on Kindle Unlimited, so I just downloaded it. It has a lot of really great reviews. Isn't that beautiful? And I pull it up. I like the bottom, go up a little higher, like the little shop thing. So yes, it's a beautiful cover. I
It
love
is. I
it.
cannot take any credit for my book covers. So
Well,
the publisher did that.
you didn't have any input.
She makes them, makes a few samples, and then I can give a little feedback, and then she tweaks it some more. Um, but I would say she really gets most of the credit.
Yeah, good for you that you had a book. I had say in mine, but it never actually. I mean, actually anything. I would say, no, I don't like that. And it didn't matter. So I had say,
Mm,
but I didn't have say. So that's why I
yeah.
changed all my covers when I went indie, at least my novel covers. So tell us about this book. Tell me how this whole idea of the book came about. And you can give us a little bit of a background on it. So, and just so you know, and those listening know, that I will put the link for the book in the show notes so everybody can get it and so they can see it for themselves and pick it up. And it does have some great reviews. I think you're at a 4.8 Amazon reviews, which is really
Mm.
good. So tell us a little bit about this book, Laura.
So the original inspiration actually came from my dad and a family story that he shared over the years about his dad and his uncle who had a younger brother, and the two older brothers were in business together, and the younger brother just had some struggles, and the older brothers did everything they could to try to help him and even try to set him up in his own business and different things, and then he ended up um, working for them over time. But I was just always impressed by the way my grandfather and my great uncle took care of their younger brother. And I didn't know all of what was going on. I don't think my dad really knew either. Um, so I guess I was just thinking about that, and I loved the way they cared for him. And that was the inspiration for the story. But I'm not writing a family story. Just to be clear, in case any of my relatives watch this, you know, I'm
Not
not
in
airing, yeah,
it.
I'm not airing dirty laundry or anything like that. It was just the initial idea, and then when I started writing, the characters kind of took on lives of their own, and so that's the 1950s timeline, and then the 2015 timeline basically came about because, well, I needed people who would care about what was happening in this particular family in the 1950s. And so um, I just kind of had the idea of I needed a grumpy professor who needed the information because he's doing research for a biography um, on an important local author, novelist. And I needed somebody else who would kind of be his foil, who needed the information for completely different reasons.
Mm.
And it turns out he doesn't know, but she, Leslie is her name, she's actually um, the great niece of this author that he wants to write about, but nobody knows, he doesn't know that. And so there's kind of the tension there. So two completely different inspirations, but brought them into one story.
So is this grumpy professor an old guy or is he young?
Not, well, you know,
Is
how
there a
old is
romance?
very relative.
I'm just curious. I see in my mind. I can't help it. I see romance everywhere. So is it like, are they gonna have a little romantic? But is he too old to be
So
romantic?
he's probably, you know, early 40s,
Okay.
and she's about 35.
Okay.
Um, and So I really actually did not want to have a romance trope in the story, but uh,
The
yeah,
characters had other ideas.
I had to succumb to some things as I was writing. Let's just put it that way.
I think sometimes it's funny because even the darkest book, the first book I wrote was my darkest was inspired by my brother's suicide, but I did
Mm,
not. It was not about my brother, although I did use a lot of resemblances of family. And,
hmm.
it wasn't supposed to be a romance, but at the end, there is a romantic element at the end that comes to play.
Mm.
So it just sometimes that I don't know. I can't help it. I'm a sucker for a romance. So I like to have something in there, but it's all clean, and above
Yeah.
board. But
Well, and I don't write romance as you do. I mean, mine is not a romance genre, but there is an element of romance in there.
yeah,
So just saying that. So, for anybody that has expectations about it being a romance, that's not
right.
the primary thing going on, but it definitely adds to the tension of the story. So,
Well,
yeah.
I don't even think mine are typical romances because I don't do the formulaic.
Mm,
kind of. I've never been able to do that formulate kind of romance, but
hmm
I do. It is kind of fun to see characters, I think, change when they're in relationship with somebody, whether it's romantic or not, but how God uses people to change our hearts and to
hmm
shape us a little bit to be more Christ-like in the end, which is the
hmm
hope.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and also just maybe similar to yours, Jennifer, the 1950s timeline actually has one of the character that I was talking about, the younger brother, it wrestles with some mental health issues.
mhm.
And so it there's a darker, heavier element in that part. So I've tried to offset that with the more contemporary timeline and um with there's more humor and a little bit more lightheartedness in that part. So I think it strikes a pretty good
Balance.
balance because there are some heavy issues.
Yeah, I think when you deal, and that's what I had to do with Providence. I actually rewrote it I mean, from start to finish. I wrote the whole book. I had Steve Lobby look at it. I took everything out except for one chapter and rewrote the rest of it. And I did that one more time. So,
Mm,
for me, it was a cathartic experience because my brother had just committed suicide. So
mm,
going through a grieving process and trying to write and understand, and at the same time, God was healing my heart.
mm,
I wanted that to be evident in the story. So there
mhm,
was that. So it came out, there was humor, there was lightheartedness, there were some other parts as well as the darkness, you know. I think anytime you put a book together or a story of any kind, you watch any show, even a movie, there can only be so much tension and so much drama before you have to give them a break because
mhm,
a reader can't take it for too long. They need a break.
mhm.
So.
Yeah, and I'm sorry about your brother.
Oh, thank you. It's
But
been many years, but it's one of the things when I speak, I talk about he's the one who gave me my first Bible. He was a born again Christian.
oh,
And so when a year after his suicide, I had opened the Bible. I was reading it, but I had opened it up at a quiet time and saw the back he had written, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. Because when he gave it to me, I was going through a really hard divorce and I was in a dark place. My daughter had just had a pretty bad accident. It was just a hard season. And he had said that. And then I just broke down. I'm like, why couldn't you believe that?
hmm,
Gave it to me, and he had been misdiagnosed. He had bipolar disorder, but he had been diagnosed with depression, so they gave him medication, and I think that played again a mental health issue that played against it. So there are a lot, and I brought it up because I actually had a woman in my Bible study say, "Well, he's in hell because he committed the unpardonable sin." And I said, well, then you need to read your Bible because that is not the unpardonable sin. And I don't believe you. My brother was a Christian and God understands mental illness. But I thought, how many other people think that way?
hmm,
So
hmm,
that's what developed that story. That made me want
hmm.
to write that book because
Yeah.
I want other
Oh,
people. Yeah.
I'm sorry that somebody said that to you, but I'm glad that you knew what to say back to her and that you had the truth.
Well, I was
Yeah.
surrounded by I had an amazing pastor, and my husband, of course, and then some just really amazing people around me that knew the word, and I think we need to anchor ourselves in that because that's where we can be sidewalled so easily by the enemy. If we don't know the word of God, if we don't know the absolute truth, somebody can hand you just enough truth to throw you off and you're not sure if you don't know if you're not clean in your scriptures if you're not real sure
hmm
about it. So I
hmm
do encourage. I don't know how many people really dig in, but I can't imagine not knowing the word, and that's a lifelong journey. There's a lot of words in there. A lot of
hmm
words. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like your book really has a lot of similarities to mine
mm.
with the very heavy, dark issues. So,
Well, I did
yeah.
just download it on KU and I'm looking for a book to read. So I'm going to dig into that one. That's my next
Mm.
read. So
Oh,
once I
thank you.
get that read, I'll get a review up for you. But
Oh, thank you.
yeah, I'm excited to read that to see. And there's something about the 1950s timeline. I think I was born in the wrong era. I should have been raised in the 50s. I wanted to be in Mayberry and
Yeah. Well, Mayberry actually is in the
It,
60s.
it
I
is.
think it
But
started in 50.
if you're born in the 50s,
Yeah.
then you could have been in Mayberry
Oh,
in the,
that's true. That's true. Right.
because
Yes. And
I was actually born in 1962, so too late by the time I was in the 70s by the time I remembered anything, and that was totally different than Mayberry.
yeah. Well, I have a lot of nostalgia for the 1950s also. And I think it could kind of be because my parents were in their 20s at that point,
Hmm.
and
Mine
that's when they
too.
were finishing college, they got married, and they that I was born at the end of the 50s, but um yeah, I actually love some of the 1950s TV programs
Oh,
like
me too.
Leave It to Beaver and the Lucy Show and the old Danny Thomas Show, Make Room
Hmm.
for Daddy.
Buddy.
I just
Father
love those
Knows Best.
shows. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they had some good
Mr.
shows
Brooks.
then.
Yeah, there's a lot of good fun ones. So yeah,
Clean
I make
classic.
reference to some of them in that timeline. I kind of had to look up and make sure which shows were actually showing at what time, because that's when TV started becoming more prevalent in
Yeah,
homes across America.
yeah, it's
And
interesting.
ironically, with all the sitcoms that were coming out, they show kind of a lighthearted view of life, kind of Mayberry-esque in some
Mhm.
ways, and don't really you don't get into the nitty-gritty of how difficult things were.
Well, it's
And
an
so
escape.
and back, yes, it was an escape, which is great. There's a place for escape.
Yes.
Um, but one of the things I wanted to show too in this story is just how people responded to families that had mental health struggles with one of their family members, because we think there's a lot of stigma today regarding mental illness, and there is, but not
Not right
compared
now.
to back then. And um, man, you wouldn't want to tell anybody, you would, everything was just kept a deep, dark secret. You
Yeah.
just didn't admit certain things. You couldn't be transparent. And so if you suffered alone a lot of the times. And I think I think in the 50s, there were starting to be better practices for how to deal with mental illness, better than how they were in decades prior to
Right.
that. But but they didn't always diagnose things right. They didn't always,
They
they were
still
just
don't.
learning about certain kinds of
Yeah.
medications. They didn't know how those medications would play out over the years. So there was a lot of that going on. And I think one of my hopes with this story too is I just hope it opens a dialogue on discussing mental health. And because I think the more people um, talk about it, um, the more transparent people are, or the more, first of all, the more empathy you have. If you read a story that happened to somebody else, and you can sit and talk about these characters who aren't you and who aren't your family, I think that can really open up the dialogue for possibly getting to the point where you're talking about you and your family and things that need to be shared. And I think that kind of transparency and empathy feed off each other. And I think talking about those things is what helps reduces the stigma of mental illness, because who isn't touched in some way by mental illness in some way? I mean, everybody is. It's all around us, and
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I know when I wrote Providence, I was very nervous about some of the response that I would get in reviews, especially um, because it was in the church, and here you are in the church, and I was
Mm-hmm.
shocked and pleasantly surprised how many people wrote in the reviews. It's fine. It's about time somebody said that mental illness is a real thing, and not just
Mm,
if you had enough faith, you wouldn't have this issue, and so I just think people need someone
mm,
to open. And I think fiction is a very good place for, like one of my books I wrote talked about a lot of issues with infertility and wanting to then go in and do in vitro and do all those things that people do when they're desperate to have a child.
mm,
And as the character is delving with that issue in relationship to her faith, it's a vehicle for other people dealing with that issue to read about it, and it's not in their face. It's not them. It's this character. This character Becca
Mhm.
is the one going through it, so they could
Mhm.
see it, and then they might be able to see how it could play out for them as well. But
Mhm.
it's not a judgment in their face. It's about Becca. It's not about you. It's about Becca, and everybody
Mhm.
makes their own choices. But again, with the mental illness, when you bring it out, you're allowing people to see it from a distance where it's not in their face and that they
Yeah.
don't become defensive, but they
Right.
may be introspective about it.
Right. Isn't that one of the great things about fiction?
Mhm. That art of all kinds, you can do that. So
Hmm.
I applaud you for that and anxious to read that. And then you have another book coming out this coming September, correct?
Correct.
And what is that one?
So that one is called House of Wind, and that one is actually about, speaking of tough topics, things
You
that
like those, don't you?
it, it could be, misconstrued, cause a lot of flack or whatever. It's about the wife of a narcissist pastor, and it's it's you know what? I have not actually developed my elevator pitch for this story.
I'm gonna be totally honest with you, Laura. I have never ever developed an elevator pitch for any of my books. I
Oh,
don't do them. I don't like them. I'm not good at them, so I fumble along. I said, just read the back of the book.
well,
But
that's what I would like to say. But then when somebody asks me to my face, what's your book about? You need to be able to say it in a
something.
succinct way
You
that
do.
will sound appealing, which I think I figured it out for some of my other ones. But anyhow, but
Well, it's still new.
it's the, pardon?
It's still new.
I'm
It's
sorry.
not like you haven't.
Oh,
It's still a
yeah.
new book for you.
Yes, correct. So, but anyhow, it's basically about this woman has been married to a very well-known and a pastor that many people love and respect, and they have no idea what goes on behind closed doors at home. And she doesn't really see it clearly either until after they've been married about 16 years. And they have two kids together who are 14 and 11. And she she does start to get some counseling and therapy and realizes, aha, this is what's happening. And she would not have known how to put it together. And this story kind of came about because a friend of mine went through a situation similar to this. And I'm just seeing, and in her experience and a little bit too in my observations, this is happening all over the place. And it's just a shame. And I guess I'd like to clarify one thing about that story, um, is that it kind of takes you on her journey through figuring out what's going on and what she needs to do about it. And how you deal with a narcissist, especially when it's your spouse. And um, I think it is going to be a little bit controversial, but I just feel like sin should not be swept under the rug. And I think so often it is in these kind of situations. And it's real easy to turn something into spiritual abuse too. And so I, this is not a story that's doing any church bashing. I go to church. I believe I am a Christian, and we need the church. We need Christian
Yes.
community, and I'm all about that. And all I all I'm doing in this story is showing something that should not be happening, um, in
Well,
the church or in Christian family.
I keep seeing, just like you, all of a sudden, I'm hearing about all these people.
Hmm.
And I have a former family member who
Mm.
was a narcissist, and you could spot it. My I like to be an armchair psychologist here. My bachelor's was in psychology, so I dabble in a little bit of that as well. But it's the idea that a narcissist, from what I'm seeing, is they're so focused on self, they don't care about anybody but themselves. And
Hmm.
it's a very, it seems like it's more happening more and more often. You see it more often now than ever before, or maybe we're just noticing it more. You
Hmm.
know, is that entitlement or that, but I think it can be the people that I know that are narcissists, it comes from being raised in a certain way,
Hmm.
family member or some kind of abuse
Yeah.
in their own family. So
Yeah.
I don't
And I
know.
think what's maybe a little bit, I guess I would put it under the umbrella as mental illness because it's not healthy. It's not mentally
Right,
healthy. Um, but I think the sad, hard thing about narcissism is because a narcissist truly doesn't have empathy and can only see things from their own perspective, I don't believe there's as much hope for change
right.
in that person, which is just, I hate to say that, but I just think that's been shown. Um,
Well, would they even have the wherewithal to see that they have an issue? I mean, you can't expect to change if you don't want to change. And if you don't
mhm,
see a problem, why would you even ask for help
mhm,
to solve that problem? And narcissists don't see it's always the other person. It's not them. They're
mhm.
perfectly fine. It's you. It's your fault. It's your
Right.
problem.
And that's what they do well is that blaming
Hmm.
and manipulating and gaslighting and
Yeah, it's
that
very
kind of
scary
thing.
stuff.
So,
Well, I'm hoping when because this book will be coming out in September. I know that's not too far out into the future, but maybe when the book comes out, you can come back on here and we can talk about that a little bit more and see how that.
oh, I would love to.
I'd love to have you
Thank you.
back here. I just feel like we have this kinship, it's all about a room for Kathy and
To Kill a
and Kill a
Mockingbird.
Mockingbird. Not that I mean, there are a lot of people that like that one, but A Room for
Yeah.
Kathy. I've got to tell you, that is I don't know. I don't know anybody else who's ever mentioned that book before. So it's weird that I would even put it on my About Me page, actually. So that
Hmm.
it was meant to be. But it's been a
Yeah.
pleasure, Laura, having you here. I'll make sure that your book and everything is in the show notes, and we will. I wish you the best on this. It sounds like a great book. I'm going to dig into it myself tonight and start reading it. I'm looking forward
Oh,
to it. So appreciate you
thank you.
coming on to Between the Lines, and it's just been a real pleasure.
Oh, it's been a pleasure for me too, and thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been great. Thank you so much. And I will see you maybe in a few months.
Okay, great.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.